Welcome back. Before we begin our final stop on the journey, I hope that you were able to spend a little bit of time at that site in Jericho, just imagining what it would be like to be with Jesus in that moment when he heals a blind man. And hopefully reflect and continue to reflect on, in your Lenten journey, on what it would mean like to say to Jesus, have mercy on me. So like all of these stops, I'm inviting you to return to them during Lent, not just during this weekend retreat, but to let your imagination go back to these places and enter into that story and see what new might come up for you. But in this final journey, Jesus leaves Jericho and he walks up to near Jerusalem. Just on the other side of the hill from Jerusalem is Bethany and Bethphage. A lot's happened in Bethany, a lot of people living in Bethany. He's been there a number of times. But I love this story. It's not one of the most famous stories, but it's always attracted me, and I'll tell you why in a moment when we read it. But he's climbing up this hill. He's walking, presumably, with his disciples up this hill. I've been on this hill. It's quite a drive. There is desert all around him, and then you get up into the higher country and there begin to be trees and rocks. And so he comes to this place, Bethany. It's hard to say whether this story was in Bethany or Bethphage, so we're just sort of, it doesn't really matter, but we know where he is. So here's the sort of the landscape. You can see this landscape around Bethany. It's high up. There are lots of rocks, bushes. It's green. There is water up here. It's a little more inviting than down there in the desert around Capernaum, but it has its own sense of beauty. And the story is this. Let me just read the story and then we'll talk a little bit about it and why I wanted to end here. And I've titled this story, Jesus Asks for a Favor, and I'll tell you why in a minute. When they were approaching Jerusalem at Bethphage and Bethany, near the Mount of Olives, he sent two of his disciples and said to them, "Go into the village ahead of you, and immediately as you enter it, you will find tied there a colt that has never been ridden. Untie it and bring it. If anyone says to you, 'Why are you doing this?' just say this, 'The Lord needs it, and will send it back here immediately.'" They went away and found a colt tied near a door outside in the street. As they were untying it, some of the bystanders said to them, "What are you doing untying the colt?" They told them what Jesus had said, and they allowed them to take it. Then they brought the colt to Jesus and threw their cloaks on it, and he sat on it. Many people spread their cloaks on the road, and others spread leafy branches that they had cut in the fields. Then those who went ahead and those who followed were shouting. The reason I like this story is let me just bring up the reflection question. Jesus asks his disciples to go find a colt and tell the stranger that Jesus needs it. So the reflection question is this: if Jesus asked you to go ask a stranger for a favor, how would you prepare yourself? How did the disciples prepare themselves? Did they resist? I mean, to just go ask a complete stranger for their possession seems like kind of risky. And then the second reflection question: as you encounter strangers during Lent, how will you be prepared to accept their help? One of the hardest things to do sometimes is to accept help from others. We're pretty quick to offer help because we see that this is what Jesus wants us to do. But sometimes when people want to help us, we resist, even though it's a gift to be able to accept help. So I've always loved this story for how uncomfortable it would make me feel to go ask a stranger to give me their donkey. I don't know how you feel about that, but there you go. So I just want to reflect a little bit about our journey as well. Before you go away and reflect, this will be your last exercise for the retreat. I want you to be able to reflect on each of the places that you've been during this journey. On the mountain, in Capernaum, in Judea, in Jericho, and now at Bethany. And as you travel during your Lenten period, until Easter, until Holy Week, maybe you'll return to one or two of these places or all of them. I invite you to return to them, be in that story, encounter the people in that story. Imagine yourself in that story and reflect on what that story might mean to you during Lent. Thank you for being here with me. As I send you out to reflect on this last story, maybe have a little fun with it, because to go ask a stranger for a donkey seems to have a little bit of comedy in it if you visualize that story. But in any case, are you a disciple? Are you a stranger who owns the donkey? Are you someone in the street who's observing this? Are you Jesus? Focus a little bit on that encounter with the person who owns this donkey and what it was like for them to give up something precious to them for Jesus. So again, thank you. Thank you for this opportunity. I hope that your Lenten journey is fruitful and that each of these stories brings meaning to you during your Lenten season. Thanks so much.